Hello everybody, this is Refresh and I'm here to bring you a battle between the Brawl decks from Throne of Eldraine and the Battle of the Horde challenge deck from Born of the Gods. We'll be playing two games, first on normal difficulty with 3 turns before the Horde attacks, and then on hard mode, and we'll be using 3 hero cards for these games. We'll be using the Harvester, which says tap, draw a card, then discard a card, the Explorer, which says you may play an additional land on each of your turns, and the Vanquisher, which says your starting hand size is increased by 1, your maximum hand size is increased by 1. Because I only have 1 copy of each of these cards, I'll be applying all 3 cards to all 4 decks simultaneously. We'll be playing this in standard 2-player Brawl mode because we only have 1 opponent, and so I think it's only fair that the Horde gets a slightly better chance with 25 life to start the game, and we'll start by drawing 8 cards apiece. Syr Gwyn draws a Mortify, Embereth Shieldbreaker, Windscarred Crag, Bond of Discipline, Integrity, Intervention, Mountain, Ancestral Blade, and Embereth Skyblazer. This is not a great hand because we're kind of short on lands here, so we are going to mulligan this. Our second hand has a Plains, Embereth Skyblazer, Godless Shrine, Plains, Venerable Knight, Knight of the Ebon Legion, Fireborn Knight, and Midnight Reaper. We don't have any red mana here, but most of the cards here are not red, and I think that this is good enough to get started, so we will keep this hand. Chulane draws a Tranquil Cove, Forest, Selesnya Guildgate, Marrowleaf Pixie, Frilled Mystic, Steelbane Hydra, Hallowed Fountain, and Leafkin Druid. I think this is an acceptable first hand. We have some ramp, we have a payoff, and we have some lands. Korvold draws a Swamp, Forest, Bloodfell Case, Rakdos, Guildgate, Pollenbright Druid, Golgari, Finebroker, Jungle Hollow, and Taste of Death. This is kind of a slow hand, and so we're gonna mulligan this. Our second hand has an Orzhov Enforcer, Witch's Oven, Dreadhorde Invasion, Bloodfell Cave, Swamp, Thrashing Brontodon, Arcane Signet, and Command Tower. I think this is a better hand, so we will keep it. Alela draws a Workshop, Elders, Tranquil Cove, Orzhov Guildgate, Arcanist Owl, Ancestral Blade, Plains, Island, and Plains. This is heavy on lands, however, we have an early play and we can hope to get into better cards, and so we will keep this hand. Because this is multiplayer, we have free mulligans, so we don't have to go down any cards, and we will all draw a card on our first turn. Syr Gwyn draws a Bloodfell Case, Chulane draws a Prison Realm, Korvold draws a Blood-Soaked Altar, Alela draws a Guild Globe. Gwyn will play the Plains and will play the Godless Shrine, and it says as it enters the battlefield you may pay 2 life. If you don't, it enters the battlefield tapped. We will pay the 2 life. We'll go down to 23, and then they'll both be untapped. We'll tap them both and play a Venerable Knight and a Knight of the Ebon Legion. Venerable Knight is a 2/1 human knight. When Venerable Knight dies, put a +1/+1 counter on target knight you control. And Knight of the Ebon Legion is a 1/2 Vampire Knight, and for 2 and a black, Knight of the Ebon Legion gets +3/+3 and gains Death Touch till end of turn. At the beginning of your end step, if a player lost 4 or more life this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Knight of the Ebon Legion. Chulane will play a Forest, will play a Hallowed Fountain. It says that you may pay 2 life, otherwise it enters the battlefield tapped. We will pay the 2 life, going down to 21. We'll tap both. And then we will play the Marrowleaf Pixie. This is a 2/2 fairy with flying, and you can tap it to add green or blue. Korvold will play a Command Tower and a Swamp. We'll tap both. And then we will play the Dreadhorde Invasion. This is an enchantment. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life and amass 1. Whenever a zombie token you control with power 6 or greater attacks, it gains lifelink until end of turn. Alela will play the Plains and the Island. We'll tap both and we'll play the Ancestral Blade. This is an equipment. When Ancestral Blade enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 soldier creature token and then attach Ancestral Blade to it. Equipped creature gets +1/+1. Go ahead and create the token and then put the blade on it, making it a 2/2. At the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Gwyn draws a Mace of the Valiant, and we will discard the Embereth Skyblazer. Chulane draws a Forest, and we will discard the Prison Realm. Korvold draws a Woodland Champion, and we will discard the Blood-Soaked Altar. Alela draws a Scrabbling Claws, and we will discard the Scrabbling Claws. We'll untap. Gwyn draws a Obnixious Cruelty. Chulane draws a Thorn Mammoth. Korvold draws Angrath, Captain of Chaos. Alela draws a Golden Egg. Gwyn will play the Bloodfell Caves tapped. When it enters the battlefield, we'll gain a life. We'll go up to 22. We'll also play the Plains. We'll tap out, and we'll play the Mace of the Valiant. This is an equipment. Equipped creatures get +1/+1 for each charge counter on Mace of the Valiant and has Vigilance. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, place a charge counter on Mace of the Valiant, equipped 3. Chulane will play the Tranquil Cove tapped and a Forest. Dread Horde Invasion will have triggered for Korvold, getting us a zombie with a +1/+1 counter. We'll lose a life to go back down to 21. We'll play the Bloodfell Caves. It comes into the battlefield tapped. We gain a life to go back up to 22. We'll tap both of the lands to play an Arcane Signet. This is an artifact. You can tap it to add 1 mana of any color in your commander's identity. We'll tap it and play the Witch's Oven. This is an artifact. It says tap sacrifice creature, create a food token. If the sacrifice creature's toughness was 4 or greater, create 2 food tokens instead. Alela will play the Orzhov Guildgate tapped and play the Tranquil Cove tapped, and when the Tranquil Cove enters the battlefield, we'll gain a life going back up to 23. We'll go to combat. We'll attack with the Soldier. We'll attack with the Knight of the Ebon Legion and the Venerable Knight. That'll do a total of 5 damage. We'll mill 5. And then at the end of our second turn, we'll use the Harvester. Gwyn draws a Marauder's Axe and will discard the Obnixious Cruelty. Chulane draws a Forest, and we will discard the Selesnya Guildgate. Korvold draws a Swamp, and we'll discard the Orzhov Enforcer. Alela draws a Temple of Silence, and we will discard the Guild Globe. We also should have cast the Golden Egg as well, so we'll do that now. It's a artifact food. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card, redo an island, and then you can pay 1, sacrifice Golden Egg, and add 1 mana of any color, or pay 2, tap, sacrifice Golden Egg, and you gain 3 life. We'll untap. Oh, I think we forgot to play the Leafkin Druid, so I will say that we did that last turn. We'll draw. Gwyn draws an Arcane Signet. Chulane draws a Circuitous Route. Korvold draws a Forest. Alela draws a Corridor Monitor. Gwyn will spend 2 mana to play the Arcane Signet, then we'll tap the remaining 3 mana to play a Midnight Reaper. This is a 3/2 zombie knight. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, Midnight Reaper deals 1 damage to you and you draw a card. And then this will trigger the Mace of the Valiant. We'll put a counter on Mace of the Valiant. Chulane will play the Forest, and we're going to hold up mana for the Thrilled Mystic. Korvold plays the Swamp and the Forest. We'll also lose a life to go back down to 22, and we'll increase the size of the zombie to 2. We'll play the Plains and the Island over here. We'll tap 4 mana, this for black, these 3. And we will play Alela, Artful Provocateur. She's a 2/3 legendary fairy warlock with flying, death touch, and lifelink. Other creatures you control with flying get +1/+0. And whenever you cast an artifact or enchantment spell, create a 1/1 blue fairy creature token with flying. We'll go to combat. We'll attack with the Soldier. Gwyn will send in the Knight of the Ebon Legion and the Venerable Knight. Chulane will send in the Marrowleaf Pixie. Korvold will send in the Zombie. That's 9 damage. We milled 2 Refreshing Elixirs. They say when Refreshing Elixir is put into a graveyard from anywhere, each player gains 5 life. We have 4 players here, and so gaining 5 life apiece, that means that we'll gain a total of 40 life to go up to 62. And then Korvold will tap 5 mana and cast himself. He's a 4/4 legendary dragon noble with flying. Whenever Korvold Fakehurst King enters the battlefield or attacks, sacrifice another permanent. Whenever you sacrifice a permanent, put a +1/+1 counter on Korvold and draw a card. We'll sacrifice the zombie token. We'll put a +1/+1 counter on Korvold and draw a card as a result. We drew a Rapacious Dragon. Meanwhile, Alela will spend 2 mana, tapping this for blue to cast a Corridor Monitor. It says, when Corridor Monitor enters the battlefield, untap target artifact or creature you control. We'll untap the Soldier. And then whenever you cast an artifact or enchantment spell, create a 1/1 fairy. So we'll create this as a 1/1 fairy. It's a 2/1 effectively because of Alela. Then we'll pass the turn to the Horde. They're going to cast the top 5 cards. First one is a Touch of the Horn God. Whenever a Minotaur attacks this turn, it gains Death Touch until end of turn. We have a Minotaur Younghorn, which has haste. Minotaur Younghorn attacks each turn if able. A Mogis is Chosen. Mogis is Chosen is a 5/4 Minotaur, and it enters the battlefield tapped, and it attacks each turn if able. Chulane will tap and cast Frilled Mystic. Frilled Mystic is a 3/2 Elf Lizard Wizard with Flash. When Frilled Mystic enters the battlefield, you may counter target spell. We'll counter the Mogis is Chosen. It gets countered. We'll cast a Vitality Salve. It's an artifact. At the beginning of the Horde's pre-combat main phase, reveal an additional card from the top of the Horde's library. The Horde casts that card. And then we have a Minotaur Goreseeker. It's a 3/2 Minotaur with haste, and it attacks each turn if able. We're going to go to combat. All of these have Death Touch, and then both of them will attack. We will decline to block any of them, and we will take a grand total of 5 damage to go down to 57. And then at the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Gwyn draws a Swamp, and we will discard Marauder's Axe. Chulane draws a Shark to Crab, and we will discard the Circuitous Root. Korvold draws a Temple of Malady, and we will discard the Temple. Alela draws a Plains, and we will discard the Plains. We'll untap. Gwyn draws a Response Resurgence. Chulane draws a Forest. Korvold draws a Forest. Alela draws a Massacre Girl. Gwyn will play the Swamp. We'll tap everything. And then play Syr Gwyn, Hero of Ashvale. She is a 5/5 legendary creature human knight with Vigilance and Menace. Whenever an equipped creature you control attacks, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. Equipment you control have equip Knight 0. Also, the Knight should have gotten a counter because we did more than 4 damage the last turn. And now that we can equip for 0, we'll put the Mace on the Venerable Knight. Chulane will play a Forest, and then we'll spend 5 mana, white, blue, green, green, to play Chulane. Chulane, Teller of Tales, is a 2/4 legendary human druid with Vigilance. Whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card, then you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. You can pay 3, tap, return a target creature you control to its owner's hand. Now we have 4 creatures, so the Leafkin Druid, which is a 0/3 elemental druid, has tap green. If you control 4 more creatures, add green, green. So we're going to tap the Marrowleaf Pixie for blue, the Leafkin Druid for 2 greens, and play another green to play the Shark to Crab. This is a 4/4 Fish Octopus Crab for 2 green blue. You can adapt for 1. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put onto a Shark to Crab, tap target creature and opponent controls. That creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. Because we cast another creature, we'll draw a card. We may put a land onto the battlefield, and so we do. Korvold should have gotten another zombie with a counter on it. And then we will play for 2 mana, Woodland Champion. And then we'll play the Forest, and for 3 mana, green, green, whatever, to play the Thrashing Brontodon. The Woodland Champion is a 2/2 Elf Scout. Whenever 1 or more tokens enter the battlefield under your control, put them in the +1/+1 counters on Woodland Champion. Thrashing Brontodon is a 3/4 Dinosaur. You can pay 1, sacrifice Thrashing Brontodon to destroy target artifact or enchantment. We'll go ahead and pay 1 to sacrifice Thrashing Brontodon to destroy the Vitality Salve. This will trigger Korvold, who will gain a counter and will draw a card. We get a Swamp. We'll play the Swamp as well. The Vitality Salve is destroyed. It says whenever a Vitality Salve is put into a graveyard from anywhere, each player returns a creature card from his or her graveyard to the battlefield. We will return the Embereth Skyblazer to the battlefield. This is a 4/3 human knight. As long as it's your turn, Embereth Skyblazer has flying. When Embereth Skyblazer attacks, you may pay 2 in red. If you do, creatures you control get +X/+X to end of turn, where X is the number of opponents that you have. Chulane has no creatures. Korvold will get back the Thrashing Brontodon. Alela has no creatures. Alela will play the Temple of Silence. We'll scry. We will take the Dimir Gilgate and put it on the bottom. And then Alela will spend 4 mana and play Arcanist Owl. This is a 3/3 artifact creature bird with flying. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal an artifact or enchantment card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Take a look at the top 4. We drew a Manageo, Law Mage's Binding, Winged Words, and Bag of Holding. We can choose anything but the Winged Words. We'll take the Bag of Holding and put it into our hand. We'll shuffle the rest and then put it on the bottom. And because we cast a artifact spell, we will get another fairy. We'll use the dice to track the number of fairies that we have. And then we will tap another mana to play the Bag of Holding. This is an artifact, so whenever you discard a card, exile that card from your graveyard. 2, tap, draw a card, then discard a card. Or 4, tap, sacrifice Bag of Holding, return all cards exiled with a Bag of Holding to their owner's hand. Because we cast another one, we'll create another fairy. We'll go to combat, we'll attack with the Midnight Reaper, the Knight of the Ebon Legion, the Venerable Knight, as well as Chulane and the Frilled Mystic. We'll also attack with Korvold, the Fey Cursed King, sacrificing the zombie token, putting a counter on Korvold and drawing a card. This is Gluttonous Troll. We'll also attack with the Soldier, Alela, Artful Provocateur, one of the fairies that we have here. That's a total of 26 damage. 2 of it is lifelink, so we'll gain 2 life to go up to 59. We'll mill 26 cards. Starting from the bottom, we have a Massacre Totem. It says that when Massacre Totem is put into a graveyard from anywhere, put the top 7 cards of the Horde's library into its graveyard. We'll take 7 more. Then we have Plundered Statue. When it's put into a graveyard from anywhere, each player draws a card. We'll each draw. Gwyn draws a Boros Guildgate. Chulane draws an island. Korvold draws Judith the Scourge Diva. Alela draws Heraldic Banner. We also mill an Altar of Mogis. It says when Altar of Mogis is put into a graveyard from anywhere, the Horde sacrifices 2 Minotaurs. We'll sacrifice the 2 that it has. And that's it. We'll pass the turn to the Horde. The Horde will cast the top 5 cards. We have 1 a Minotaur Goreseeker. It's a 3/2 Minotaur with haste. We have a Plundered Statue. A Descend Upon the Prey. Whenever a Minotaur attacks this turn, it gets first strike until end of turn and must be blocked this turn, if able. A Minotaur Goreseeker. And a Phobos Reaver. All 3 of these will attack. They all have first strike and they must be blocked if able. We'll block one of the Minotaur Goreseekers with Syr Gwyn. We'll block one with Chulane, and we will block the Phobos Reaver with the Thrashing of Brontodon, which will kill them all. First strike don't matter when their toughness is higher. We're going to win this, so we'll just speed this up by not doing any of the extra stuff. We'll just untap. Syr Gwyn draws a Tournament Grounds. We'll play the Guildgate tapped and play the Tournament Grounds. Chulane draws a Sihana Wayfinder. We'll play an island. Korvold creates another zombie with a +1/+1 counter on it, and we'll draw a Baked Into a Pie. Alela will draw a Shambling Suit. We'll finish this quickly. Korvold will attack with himself. This will cause us to sacrifice this zombie again. He'll get a +1/+1 counter to go up to 8, power and toughness, and we'll draw a card. We'll get a Stomping Ground. The Minotaurs take 8. The Knight of the Ebon Legion probably should have gotten more life, but that mills these 3, and the Brawl decks defeat the Horde. We'll be right back for hard mode. It's game 2 in hard mode. We'll only have 2 turns before the Horde attacks. We'll get started with 8 cards apiece. Gwyn draws a Mountain Plains, Single Combat, Swamp, Wintermoor Commander, Bond of Discipline, D-Spark, and Boros Guildgate. There's not a lot of action here. It's very reactive, and I think I'd prefer a more aggressive hand, so we will mulligan this. Now we have a Venerable Knight, Plains, Ancestral Blade, Swamp, Silverwing Squadron, Shining Armor, Mace of the Valiant, and Plains. I think this one we can keep. Chulane draws an island, Fairy Vandal, Arcane Signet, Plains, Island, Incubation, Incongruity, Spectral Sailor, and Sihana Wayfinder. I think this is a keepable hand, so we will do so. Korvold draws a Command Tower, Paradise Druid, Krenko, Street Kingpin, Golden Egg, Swamp, Rapacious Dragon, Plague Crafter, and Witch's Oven. This is a little short on mana, and we are mana hungry decks, so we will mulligan this. Korvold draws a Death Sprout, Arcane Signet, Bloodfell Cave, Swamp, Gruul, Guildgate, Plague Crafter, Vindictive Vampire, and Moldervine Reclamation. I think this is a better hand, so we will keep it. Alela draws All That Glitters, Swamp, Evolving Wilds, Winged Words, Plains, Demir Guildgate, Kaya's Wrath, and Massacre Girl. This has very little action, and so we're going to mulligan it right away. Then we draw a Golden Egg, Smothering Tithe, Arcane Signet, Massacre Girl, Guild Globe, Shimmer Dragon, Bag of Holding, and Shambling Suit. 0 lands, which is even worse, so we'll mulligan this. Now we have an Island, Golden Egg, Kaya's Wrath, Plains, Swamp, Mace of the Valiant, All That Glitters, and Animating Fairy. This is still not very good, but I think we're gonna keep this and we will pitch the Kaya's Wrath and put it on the bottom of the deck. Turn 1 we draw. Gwyn draws a Mask of Immolation. We will play the Plains and the Swamp. We'll tap both and then we'll play the Ancestral Blade. It enters the battlefield. We get a Soldier token. Chulane draws a Forest. We will play the Forest and the Plains. We'll tap both. We'll play the Arcane Signet. Then we'll tap that. We'll play the Spectral Sailor. Korvold draws a Swamp. We'll play both Swamps. We'll tap them both. We'll play the Arcane Signet. Alela draws a Mortify. We will play a Plains and an Island. We'll tap both. We'll play the Golden Egg. We'll draw a card off of its trigger. At the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Gwyn draws a Wintermoor Commander, and we discard the Mask of Immolation because we can't cast it anytime soon. Chulane draws a Meteor Golem, and we'll discard the Sihana Wayfinder. Korvold draws a Jungle Hollow, and we will discard the Plague Crafter. Alela draws a Witching Well, and we will discard the Mortify. We'll untap. Gwyn draws a Mountain. Chulane draws a Tome of Legends. Korvold draws a Witch's Oven. Alela draws an Island. Gwyn plays the Plains and the Mountain. And then we will tap 3 mana and play the Mace of the Valiant. Then we'll tap 1 mana and play the Venerable Knight. As it enters the battlefield, we'll put a counter on Mace of the Valiant. Chulane plays both islands. We'll tap out and play Chulane. Korvold will play the Jungle Hollow and the Bloodfell Caves. They both enter the battlefield tapped. We'll gain 2 life to go up to 27. We'll tap 1 more mana to play the Witch's Oven. Alela will play the Swamp and the Island, and then we'll tap out. And we will play Alela. Next we'll go to combat. We'll attack with the Soldier and the Spectral Sailor for 3. A Vitality Salve is put into the graveyard. Chulane will return the Sihana Wayfinder to the battlefield. It's a 2/1 Elf Scout. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature or land from among them and put it on the top in a random order. We have a Keeper of Fables, Incubation Druid, a Forest, and an Island. Do I need more lands, or shall I take one of these cards? I think we're going to take the Keeper of Fables and put it on top. We'll put the rest on the bottom in a random order. Unfortunately, Korvold is required to bring the Plague Crafter back to the battlefield. This will cause us to all sacrifice a creature or a planeswalker, and if you can't, you're going to lose a card. So Plague Crafter dies, Alela dies, we'll give up the Soldier token, we'll give up the Spectral Sailor, and that went pretty poorly for us. We'll go to the Horde's turn. They'll cast the top 5 cards. They cast a Phobos Reaver. It's a 3/2. This Intervention of Karanos. At the beginning of combat this turn, Intervention of Karanos deals 3 damage to each creature. Minotaur Goreseeker, a Phobos Reaver, and a Minotaur Goreseeker. It does not matter because we're going to get hit with the Intervention of Karanos, and it looks like everything will die but Chulane. So Intervention of Karanos hits. Everything dies but Chulane. Includes the Venerable Knight. There's nowhere for the counter to go. Sihana Wayfinder goes down. And then we will use the Harvester. Gwyn draws a Sky Knight Legionnaire. We'll discard the Shining Armor. Chulane draws a Keeper of Fables. We will discard the Meteor Golem. Korvold draws a Swamp. We will discard Death Sprout. Alela draws a Watery Grave, and we will discard the Chemist's Insight. Then we'll untap. We'll draw. Gwyn draws a Mountain. Chulane draws a Flower Flourish. Korvold draws a Stomping Ground. Alela draws a Frogify. Gwyn will play the Mountain. We'll tap out to play the Legionnaire and the Wintermoor Commander. The Legionnaire is a 2/2 human knight with flying and haste. The Wintermoor Commander is a human knight with Death Touch, and its toughness is equal to the number of knights you control. We'll have 2 at this point. Whenever Wintermoor Commander attacks, another target knight you control gains indestructible until end of turn. Both of these enter the battlefield, giving the Mace of the Valiant 2 more charge counters. Chulane will spend 2 mana to cast the Fairy Vandal. This is a 1/2 Fairy Rogue with Flash and Flying. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Fairy Vandal. Because we cast a creature spell, we'll draw a card. This is Simic Guildgate. This will put a +1/+1 counter on Fairy Vandal. And then we can put a land onto the battlefield. And then, so we'll do so with the Guildgate tapped. And then we will spend 2 more mana to cast the Tome of Legends. This is an artifact. It says Tome of Legends enters the battlefield with a page counter on it. Whenever your commander enters the battlefield or attacks, put a page counter on Tome of Legends, and then you may pay 1, remove a page counter for Tome of Legends to draw a card. Put a page counter on it, and then we will spend 1. We'll tap it to remove that page counter. We'll draw a card. We get a Tranquil Cove. We'll play that tapped as well as our second land for the turn. Korvold will play the Gruul Guildgate and the Stomping Ground tapped. We'll tap 4 mana and play the Vindictive Vampire. This is a 2/3 vampire, and whenever another creature you control dies, vampire deals 1 damage to each opponent and you gain 1 life. Alela will play the Watergrave tapped. We'll spend 3 mana and cast Bring to Life, which is a sorcery on the Animating Fairy. It's an adventure. Target non-creature artifact you control becomes a 0/0 artifact creature. Put 4 +1/+1 counters on it. The Golden Egg will now become a artifact creature with 4 +1/+1 counters. This will go into exile. And then we will tap and we'll play the Witching Well. This is an artifact. It says when it enters the battlefield, scry 2, and you can pay 3 in a blue to sacrifice it and draw 2 cards. We'll scry 2. We'll take a look at the top 2 cards. We have Angelic Exaltation, which we don't really want right now. It doesn't do anything. And the Swamp, which I don't think we really need that much right now either. We need more action. We'll put this at the bottom. We'll go to combat. We'll attack with the 4/4 Golden Egg. We'll attack with the Skylight Legionnaire. We'll attack with Chulane. This will put a counter on the Tome. And that is a total of 8 damage. We hit a Massacre Totem, so we'll mill 7 more. We hit a Plundered Statue, so we'll all draw a card. Chulane draws a Plains. Korvold draws a Chittering Witch. Alela draws a Shimmer Dragon. Gwyn draws an Icon of Ancestry. Then we'll go to the Horde's turn. They're going to cast the top 5 cards. We have a Minotaur Younghorn, a Minotaur Younghorn, a Minotaur Younghorn, a Mogis Chosen enters the battlefield tapped, and a Reckless Minotaur. This is a 4/1 with haste and attacks each turn of Fable. At the beginning of the end step, destroy a Reckless Minotaur. All of these will attack. We'll let the Reckless Minotaur through. The Fairy will block 1 Younghorn. The Vampire will block another Younghorn. Chulane will block the last Younghorn, and that should kill all the Younghorns. We'll take 4 and go down to 23, and the Reckless Minotaur will die as well. At the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Gwyn draws a Mountain, and we will discard the Silverwing Squadron. Chulane draws a Celestia Guildgate, and we will discard the Incubation Incongruity. Korvold draws a Goblin Cratermaker, and we will discard the Swamp. Alela draws an Island, and we'll discard the Frogify. We'll untap. Gwyn draws a Bond of Discipline. Chulane draws a Thornwood Falls. Korvold draws a Temple of Malady. Alela draws an Ancestral Blade. Gwyn will play the Mountain, and then we will tap everything and cast Syr Gwyn. We'll equip the Ancestral Blade on the Wintermoor Commander and the Mace on the Sky Knight Legionnaire. We'll play both of the tap lands here, and then we'll tap 5 mana and play Keeper of Fables. This is a 4/5 cat. Whenever 1 or more non-human creatures you control deal damage to a player, draw a card. Because we cast a creature spell, we will draw a card. This is a Growth Spiral, and then we can play this. This will also cause Fairy Vandal to tick up 1. We'll spend 2 mana to cast the Goblin Cratermaker, and then we'll spend 4 mana to cast the Chittering Witch. She is a 2/2 human warlock. When she enters the battlefield, create a number 1/1 black creature tokens equal to the number of opponents you have. We have 1 opponent, so we'll create 1 rat. We'll play the Temple of Malady tapped. This will let us scry 1. We'll take the Taste of Death and put it on the bottom. Alela will play the Island, and then for 6 we will play Alela. Hopefully she'll survive this time. We'll go to combat. We'll attack with the Wintermoor Commander and the Skylight Legionnaire, which doesn't have to tap because of the mace. We'll attack with Chulane, and we'll attack with the Fairy Vandal. We'll attack with the Vindictive Vampire, and we'll attack with the Golden Egg. Chulane attacking will put a counter on here, dealing combat damage with the Fairy Vandal will give us a card. That's a Firemind Vessel. And that is a total of 19 damage going to the Horde. The Horde hits a refreshing elixir, and so it will gain 20 life to go up to 43. We hit an Altar of Mogus, so we're going to sacrifice the Mogus' Chosen. That is it. We'll pass to the Horde. They're going to cast the top 5 cards. They have a Phobos Reaver, a Minotaur Younghorn, a Minotaur Younghorn, a Reckless Minotaur, and Intervention of Kronos again. So a lot of stuff is going to die. Fortunately, it won't be much of our stuff. All of the Horde creatures die. Chulane keeps everything. We'll go ahead and spend 1 mana to tap the Tome of Legends and draw a card. We'll get a Thorn Mammoth. We will tap the Witch's Oven to sacrifice a rat, which will get us a food token. And then the damage is going to come through and whack all of the remaining creatures. This is going to put 4 total damage on the stack for the Vindictive Vampire, and we will also gain 4 life. We gain 4 life to go to 47. 4 damage will hit the Horde. We get a Refreshing Elixir and a Plundered Statue, so we'll draw and then get another 20 life to go up to 67. Gwyn draws an Arcane Signet. Chulane draws a Command Tower. Korvold draws an Evolution Sage. Alela draws a Dismal Backwater. Alela gets zapped again and perishes. And all of Gwyn's creatures survive. We're going to use the Harvester at the end of the turn. Gwyn draws a Sky Knight Vanguard, which we'll keep, and we'll discard the Bond of Discipline. Chulane draws a Shark to Crab, and we will discard the Flower Flourish. Korvold draws a Krenko, and we will discard the Evolution Sage. Alela draws a Bag of Holding, and we will discard the Mace of the Valiant. We'll untap. We'll draw. Gwyn draws a Integrity Intervention. Chulane draws a Steelbane Hydra. Korvold draws a Golgari Finebroker. Alela draws a Prison Realm. This is pretty moot. We're just going to go to combat and finish the Horde off. We'll attack with Golden Egg. We'll attack with Syr Gwyn. We'll attack with the 2 Knights. We'll attack with Chulane, Keeper of Fables, Fairy Vandal. This will get a counter on this. And then that will do more than enough damage to finish off the Horde. They mill a Mogus Chosen, Touch of the Horn God, Mogus Chosen, and Phobos Reaver. And the Brawl decks win the day. Let me know what your thoughts were about these games in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you'd like to see more of these videos, you can hit subscribe. I'll be back next time, pitting these Brawl decks up against the Defeat a God challenge deck from Journey to Nyx. Until then, this was Refresh, and thanks for watching.